What happens when a quiet veteran is mocked by teens at a small-town parade? Their taunts spark a fire, but what follows leaves the entire crowd speechless. My name's Hiram Jessup, and at 82, I've seen enough of this world to know its highs and lows. That morning in Bright Hollow, Nebraska, June sun burning down like a spotlight, I figured I'd earned a quiet spot to watch the Independence Day parade on Juniper Avenue. I'd walked 2 miles from my little house on Tumbleweed Drive, my folding chair slung over my shoulder, my old khaki jacket hanging loose on my frame. That jacket's plain as dirt, no medals or patches, but it's carried me through worse than a long walk, through jungles, gunfire, and nights I thought I'd never see morning. I didn't come for applause or free coffee. I came to honor the flag, to feel the pulse of a country I bled for back in Vietnam. Juniper Avenue was a riot of color. Red, white, and blue banners flapping from every lamppost, kids waving those little plastic flags that break by noon, and the Bright Hollow High marching band blasting Sweet Caroline like their lives depended on it. Food trucks lined the street, their grills hissing with burgers, the air thick with grease and laughter. Families sprawled on blankets, some snapping selfies, others yelling at their kids to stay close. I set my chair near Brood Haven, a cozy coffee shop with flower boxes out front, and settled in, my hands resting on my knees, fingers brushing the frayed hem of my jacket. I'd gotten there early, staked my claim, and nodded to a young couple nearby with a stroller. "Fine day, ain't it?" I said, my voice gravelly but warm. They smiled, said, "Sure is," then went back to their phones. I didn't mind. I'm used to fading into the background, just another old man with a limp and a story nobody asks about. The parade kicked off with a roar, fire trucks wailing, cheerleaders tossing batons, and a float from the local VFW post rolling by, its banner flapping proud. I watched it all, my chest tight with memories. I saw that flag, and it wasn't just cloth, it was the weight of my M16, the mud in my boots, the letters I wrote home but never sent. I saw my platoon, faces I'd never forget, some gone before they hit 20. I blinked hard, keeping my gaze steady, letting the music wash over me. For a moment I felt whole again, part of something bigger than my quiet days tending tomatoes or reading library books dog-eared by a dozen hands before mine. Then came the trouble, slinking in like a snake in tall grass. A pack of teenagers, 4 of them, all baggy shorts and loud laughs, sauntered up, clutching slushies that stained their lips blue. They flopped onto the curb a few feet from my chair, their voices sharp as broken glass. The ringleader, a lanky kid with a backward cap, glanced my way. I caught his eye, gave a nod, but his smirk told me he wasn't here to make friends. "Yo, Grandpa," he said, loud enough to turn heads. "You lost or something? Nursing home's that way." His name was Tyler Hensley. I heard one of his buddies call him that later, and his words landed like a slap. His friends snickered, a girl with long braids tossing her head back, her earrings glinting. I kept my eyes on the parade, my jaw tight. "Just here to watch, son," I said, keeping my tone even. I've heard worse. Charlie's taunts in the jungle, COs chewing me out for a scuffed boot. But this was different. This was home, and it stung. I thought kids these days got no manners, but they'll move on. I was wrong. Tyler leaned back, picking up a pebble and tossing it at my chair. It pinged off the metal, sharp as a BB gun. His friends howled, and a few folks nearby glanced over, frowning but saying nothing. "Look at this guy," Tyler said, louder now, playing to the crowd. "Bet he's here for the free hot dogs. You ever even seen a war, old man?" His voice dripped with scorn, and I felt it like a blade twisting in my gut. I saw my buddy Ray, bleeding out in my arms at Bravo checkpoint, his eyes begging me to lie and say he'd make it. I saw the shrapnel scars on my leg, hidden under my slacks, aching in the damp. I didn't owe this kid my story, but his words made my blood simmer. I turned my head, slow, meeting his eyes. "I don't need to prove nothin' to you, son," I said, my voice low but steady. "But you ought to show some respect for this day, if not for me." I thought I saw a flicker in his eyes. Shame, maybe, but it drowned in his smirk. The girl, Marissa Delgado, flicked a straw wrapper at me, giggling like it was a game. "Bet he's faking it for attention," she said, her voice high and cruel. "My uncle says half these old guys lie about being vets. That one hit harder than the pebble." My hands clenched, nails digging into my palms. I'd carried my discharge papers in my wallet for years, not for show, but to remind myself who I was. I didn't flash 'em now. Pride wouldn't let me. "Mind your manners, young lady," I said, my tone sharper now, but still calm. "I ain't one for shouting matches, never was. In Numb, you kept your cool or you died. But inside, I was burning. I thought, Lord, give me patience, 'cause these kids are testing it." Tyler stood, stepping closer, his sneakers scuffing the pavement. Respect? For what? Sitting there like some creepy statue? "Move over, man, you're blocking our view." He nudged my chair with his foot, hard enough to make it wobble. I gripped the arms, steadying myself, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with a deep, aching anger. I'd faced ambushes, mortar fire, nights wondering if I'd see dawn. A kid's shove wasn't gonna break me, but it hurt in a way bullets never did. A few folks in the crowd muttered. Disapproval, maybe, but nobody stepped up. A woman with a stroller shook her head, whispering to her husband, but they stayed put. I felt their eyes, judging, waiting for me to fold or fight. I thought, ain't this just life? You do right, and folks still look the other way. I kept my gaze on the parade, afloat with kids waving sparklers passing by, their laughter clashing with the tension around me. Tyler's crew kept at it, their taunts bolder. Jamal, one of the boys, tossed another pebble, this one skimming my shoe. "Man, he's just taking up space," he said, laughing. Caden, the quiet one, smirked but stayed back, like he knew this was wrong, but didn't have the guts to say so. The crowd grew, maybe 20 folks now, some curious, others annoyed. I heard a man mutter, "Why's he making trouble?" And my stomach twisted. Trouble? I'd been here first, minding my own, honoring my country. Now I was the problem. Then came Curtis Brantley, the parade organizer, striding up in his bright yellow vest like he owned the street. He was a stocky man, mid-40s, with a clipboard and a frown that said he didn't have time for this. I knew him from the hardware store, sold me nails for my garden fence once, barely looked at me. Now he sized me up, his eyes narrowing. "Sir, what's the problem here?" he asked, his voice sharp like I'd started a riot. I looked up, surprised. "No problem from me, Mr. Brantley," I said, keeping my tone respectful. "Just watching the parade. These kids been throwing things, calling me names." Tyler jumped in, pointing at me like I'd pulled a knife. "He's causing a scene, man, harassing us. Tell him to move." His friends nodded, Marissa flipping her hair, playing innocent. I thought, Lord, these kids could sell sand in a desert. Curtis sighed, glancing at the crowd, now 30 strong, phones out like vultures circling. "Look, sir," he said to me, "we're trying to keep things peaceful. Maybe find another spot? There's room down by Oak Ridge Lane." My heart sank. I'd walked 2 miles, set up early, taken nothing from nobody. Now I was the one who had to move? "I ain't causing trouble," I said, my voice steady but laced with hurt. "These kids been at me and you're asking me to leave?" Curtis rubbed his neck, clearly wanting this over. "I don't know who started what, but we can't have disruptions. Let's not make a big deal." Disruption. That word hit like a brick. I'd fought for this country, lost brothers, carried wounds that woke me at night. Now I was a disruption? I gripped my chair, torn between standing my ground and walking away. My pride said, "Stay. Hiram Jessup don't run." But my heart whispered, "Maybe you don't belong here no more." Tyler smirked, sensing blood. "Yeah, listen to the man, Grandpa. Get out of here." He shoved my chair again, harder this time, tipping it just enough to make me catch myself. The crowd gasped, a few voices muttering, "That's too far." But nobody moved. Curtis raised a hand, looking flustered. "All right, enough," he said, but his voice lacked spine. He turned to me, his eyes hard. "Sir, I'm asking one more time. Move, or I'll call security. My eyes burned, but I held his gaze. I fought for this country, I said, my voice low, carrying a weight I hadn't let out in years. I earned my place here, same as you. For a moment, Curtis faltered, like he heard me. Really heard me. But Tyler's loud scoff broke the spell. Whatever, man. Call the cops. This guy's a joke. The parade marched on, the band's horns blaring, but Juniper Avenue felt like a battlefield. I sat still, my heart heavy, my resolve unbroken. I didn't know what was coming, but I wasn't leaving. Not yet. I sat there on Juniper Avenue, Bright Hollow, Nebraska, the June sun scorching my neck, my old folding chair creaking under me like it felt the weight of the moment. The Independence Day parade marched on, fire trucks blaring, kids scrambling for candy tossed from a float. But the real battle was right here, in front of Bruidhaven Coffee Shop. I'm Hiram Jessup, 82 years old, a Vietnam vet who thought he'd seen the worst of disrespect in foxholes and firefights. But this, being mocked by kids half my grandson's age, stared down by a crowd that saw me as the problem, cut deeper than shrapnel. My hands gripped the chair's arms, my knuckles pale, but I kept my head up, my eyes on the flag flapping on a passing float. I'd earned my place here, and I wasn't moving. The crowd had swelled to 50, maybe 60 folks, their phones out, filming like I was some circus act. Tyler Hensley, the lanky kid with the backward cap, stood smirking, his blue-stained lips curled like he'd won something. His friends, Marissa Delgado with her glittering earrings, Jamal tossing pebbles like it was a game, and Caden hanging back, quiet but complicit, fed off his bravado. They'd been at me for 10 minutes, throwing wrappers, shoving my chair, calling me a fake vet. Tyler's latest jab still rang in my ears. My dad says old guys like you make it up for free beers. I thought, boy, I'd trade every beer in Nebraska for one day without kids like you questioning what I lived through. Curtis Brantley, the parade organizer in his sweaty yellow vest, stood over me, his clipboard clutched like a shield. He ran the hardware store on Maplewood Road, always barking about family-friendly events, but right now he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sir, he said, his voice tight as a drum, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Move your chair down the street, and we can all enjoy the day. I met his eyes, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I ain't the one causing trouble, Mr. Brantley. These kids been throwing things, shoving my chair, calling me names. I just came to watch the parade, same as them. I gestured to the teens, who rolled their eyes like I'd told a bad joke. I thought, Lord, give me strength, 'cause patience is running thin. Tyler stepped closer, his sneakers scuffing the pavement. He's lying, man, he shouted, pointing at me like I'd stolen his wallet. He's harassing us, acting all creepy. Tell him to get lost. Marissa nodded, flipping her hair, her phone still recording. Yeah, he was staring at us, acting all high and mighty, she said, her voice dripping with fake innocence. I shook my head, a wry smile tugging at my lips. High and mighty? Girl, I'm just trying to sit through a parade without a riot. Curtis sighed, glancing at the crowd, their murmurs growing louder. A man in a polo shirt muttered, Why's he causing a scene? A woman with a toddler whispered, Kids these days, but stayed glued to her spot. I felt their eyes, judging, waiting for me to crack. I thought of Numb, of nights under fire when I had to stay calm or lose everything. But this wasn't a jungle. This was my town. And the betrayal stung worse than any ambush. Sir, Curtis said, his tone sharper now, I don't know who started what, but we can't have disruptions. Move, or I'm calling security. He raised his radio, his thumb hovering over the button. I saw the crowd lean in, hungry for drama, and my stomach twisted. Disruption? I'd carried Ray through a burning village, his blood soaking my uniform, and never called it a disruption. I'd written letters to his mama, telling her he died brave when I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror, and now I was the problem? I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. I fought for this country, Mr. Brantley. Lost friends, carried scars you'll never see. I earned my spot here, and I ain't moving. The words came out heavier than I meant, and for a moment the crowd hushed, like they felt the weight of 68 in my voice. Curtis blinked, his radio lowering slightly, but Tyler's laugh broke the spell. "Whatever, man," Tyler shouted, tossing another pebble that skittered across my shoe. "Where's your medals, huh? Your army buddies? You got no proof." His friends cackled, and the crowd stirred, some nodding like they believed him. A man in a trucker hat yelled, "Yeah, show us something, old-timer!" I felt the heat rise in my chest. Not anger, but something deeper. Grief, maybe, for a world that doubted a man's service over a kid's taunt. I thought, proof? My proof's in the nightmares I still wake from, the names carved in my heart. I didn't carry my bronze star or purple heart to parades. I kept them in a cigar box under my bed, next to a photo of my platoon, half of them gone before we left Saigon. But I didn't owe these folks my story, and I sure wasn't gonna beg for their respect. Then a voice cut through, sharp and fierce. "What's all this nonsense?" It was Nadine Carver, the owner of Brewett Haven, storming out from her shop's doorway. She was a wiry woman, mid-40s, her apron dusted with flour from the morning's muffins, her dark eyes blazing like she'd take on the whole parade if she had to. I'd seen her around, always quick with a smile when I bought my black coffee. No sugar. Now she planted herself beside my chair, hands on hips. "Curtis, you're out here hassling an old man while these kids act like fools? What's wrong with you?" Curtis flinched, his clipboard sagging. "Nadine, stay out of it. I'm handling this." "Handling it?" Nadine snapped, her voice carrying over the parade's horns. "Looks like you're bullying a senior citizen. And you kids?" She turned to Tyler and his crew, her gaze like a drill sergeant's. "Throwing stuff, shoving his chair? Y'all ought to be ashamed." I felt a spark of warmth in my chest, like a fire kindled after a long, cold night. Somebody saw me, really saw me. Tyler's smirk faded, but Marissa stepped up, her voice shrill. "He was being weird, okay? Staring at us, acting all superior. We didn't do nothing." I almost laughed. Superior? I was just an old man trying to watch a parade without getting my chair kicked. Nadine scoffed, crossing her arms. "I saw it all from my window, girl. You're lucky I don't call your mama right now." She turned to me, her face softening. "You okay, sir? Can I get you a coffee or something?" I nodded, touched by her kindness. "I'm fine, ma'am. Just didn't expect this today." My voice cracked, and I hated it. Hated showing weakness in front of this crowd, these kids who thought they'd won. Nadine's eyes flashed, but Curtis wasn't backing down. He spoke into his radio, his voice clipped. "Yeah, send security to Juniper and Avery. We got a disturbance." I thought, disturbance? That's what you call a man sitting in his chair, honoring his country? Within minutes, 2 security guards pushed through the crowd, big men in black polos, their faces hard. The older one, Reggie Thornton, had a scowl that could curdle milk. The younger, Lance Pritchard, looked like he'd rather be eating hot dogs than dealing with this. Reggie sized me up, his voice gruff. "All right, sir, let's go. You're causing a problem." I straightened, my hands trembling but my resolve iron. "I ain't moving," I said. "I got a right to be here. Same as anyone." I thought of my platoon, of the promises we made to never back down, to stand for what's right. I wasn't about to break that now. Lance stepped closer, looming over me. "Don't make this ugly, Grandpa. Get up or we carry you out." His tone was all bluster, but I saw the crowd lean in, phones up, hungry for a show. I thought, this is what it's come to? A man can't sit through a parade without being hauled off like trash? Nadine stepped in front of me, her voice like a whip. "You touch him, and I'll have every news station in Nebraska here by noon. This is shameful." The crowd split, some cheering her, others shouting, "Just move!" Tyler and his friends laughed, Marissa filming with a grin. "This is going viral," she said, like my pain was her ticket to fame. I felt the weight of it all. The kids, the crowd, Curtis's radio, the guards' glares. My heart pounded, but I kept my eyes on the parade, on a float with veterans' flags, their colors bright against the sky. I thought, This ain't just about me. It's about every man I served with, every promise I kept. I wasn't leaving. Then a new voice broke through, deep and steady, like a lifeline in a storm. What's going on here? I looked up to see a man in his 60s, wiry and tanned, wearing a faded Marine's cap. His name was Vernon Shelby. I learned that later, and his eyes had the look of someone who'd seen his share of fights. He pushed through the crowd, his gaze locked on me, like he saw past the old man in the chair to the soldier I'd been. Curtis turned, annoyed. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. We're handling it." Vernon ignored him, stepping closer. "You a vet, brother?" he asked me, his voice low, respectful, like we were the only two people on that street. I nodded, meeting his eyes. "Yes, sir. Vietnam. 68. 70. First Sergeant, 101st Airborne." The words felt heavy, like pulling a rusted chain from deep water. Vernon's face shifted, a spark in his eyes, but he didn't say why. He turned to Reggie and Lance. "You two ought to be ashamed threatening a man like this. Back off." Reggie bristled. "Step back, sir, or you're next." Vernon didn't budge, his voice calm but hard as steel. "Try it, son. See how that goes." I felt my heart lift, just a bit. For the first time, I wasn't alone. The crowd hushed, the air thick with anticipation. Tyler shouted, "Another fake vet! Kick 'em both out!" But his voice sounded smaller now, like he knew the tide was turning. The parade's music faded, and all eyes were on us. I didn't know what was coming, but I held my ground, Vernon beside me, Nadine glaring at the guards. This wasn't over. I sat there on Juniper Avenue, Bright Hollow, Nebraska, my old folding chair digging into the pavement, the June sun burning through my khaki jacket like it wanted to sear my soul. The Independence Day parade marched on in the distance, cheerleaders twirling, a fire truck's siren wailing. But here, in front of Brewitt Haven Coffee Shop, the air crackled with a different kind of heat. I'm Hiram Jessup, 82, a Vietnam vet who thought he'd seen the worst of humanity in jungles and firefights. But today, surrounded by a crowd of 100, their phones filming my every breath, I felt like I was facing a firing squad. Kids had mocked me, thrown pebbles, called me a fake. The parade organizer, Curtis Brantley, had told me to move or face security. 2 guards loomed over me, ready to haul me off. And yet, here I was, heart pounding but head high, refusing to budge. I'd earned my place here. Same as anyone, and no one was taking that from me. Beside me stood Vernon Shelby, a wiry Marine in his 60s, his faded cap a quiet badge of honor. He'd stepped in like a brother, his voice steady when he told the guards to back off. Nadine Carver, the firebrand who owned Brewitt Haven, stood guard too, her flour-dusted apron flapping as she dared anyone to touch me. The kids, Tyler Hensley with his backward cap, Marissa Delgado with her phone, Jamal and Caden snickering in the background, kept up their taunts, but their laughter sounded hollow now, like they sensed the tide shifting. The crowd was a mix of gawkers and grumblers, some muttering support, others shouting for me to leave. I thought, Lord, I've faced worse than this, but it don't make it hurt less. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a deep, burning ache. For my country, for my brothers who didn't come home, for a town that seemed to have forgotten what this day meant. Reggie Thornton, the older security guard, cracked his knuckles, his scowl dark as a storm cloud. "Last warning, old man," he growled, stepping closer. "Move, or we're dragging you out." His partner, Lance Pritchard, loomed beside him, his bulk casting a shadow over my chair. I met Reggie's eyes, my voice low but steady. "I ain't going nowhere. I fought for this ground, same as you're standing on. I thought of Bravo Checkpoint. 68, the night I carried Ray through a hail of bullets, his blood soaking my hands. I didn't back down then, and I sure wasn't now." Nadine stepped forward, her voice sharp as a bayonet. "You lay a hand on him, Reggie, and I'll have every reporter from here to Omaha at your doorstep. This is a disgrace!" Her eyes blazed, and I felt a flicker of warmth in my chest. Bless her heart, I thought. She's fighting like she's got a platoon behind her. Curtis, sweating through his yellow vest, raised his radio again. "I'm keeping the peace, Nadine," he said, but his voice wavered, like he knew he was on the wrong side. He glanced at the crowd, now buzzing like a hive, phones up, capturing every word. "This guy's causing a scene," he muttered, pointing at me. I almost laughed. Me, causing a scene? I'd been sitting here, minding my own, while Tyler and his crew turned my quiet morning into a circus. Tyler, sensing his moment, shouted, "Yeah, kick him out! He's got no proof he's a vet!" Marissa giggled, her phone still rolling. "This is going viral," she said, like my pain was her ticket to fame. I thought, girl, you don't know what real courage looks like. The crowd stirred, a man in a trucker hat yelling, "Show us something, old-timer!" Others joined in, their voices a low rumble, like thunder before a storm. I felt the weight of their doubt, heavy as the pack I carried in Numb. My scars, my nightmares, my bronze star tucked in a cigar box at home. None of it mattered to them. I was just an old man in a chair, a target for their boredom. Vernon's voice cut through, calm but hard as steel. "You ought to be ashamed, all of you. Threatening a man who served? You don't know what he's been through." He stood tall, his marine cap casting a shadow, and I saw the crowd hesitate, like they felt the weight of his words. But Reggie wasn't backing down. "Step back, sir," he snapped, "or you're next." I leaned forward, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "You don't scare me, son. I've faced worse than you and walked away." I thought of the jungle, the screams, the nights I prayed just to see dawn. This wasn't that, but it hurt in its own way. Hurt to know my own town could turn on me like this. Then it happened, a sound that stopped my heart, not from fear, but from something deeper. A rhythmic thud, like boots on pavement, cut through the parade's music. Heads turned, phones dropped, and the crowd parted like a sea. From the far end of Juniper Avenue came a sight I never expected. 47 Marines, in dress blues, marching in perfect sync. Their white caps gleamed, their medals caught the sun, and their faces were set with a purpose that made the air hum. At their head was a young lieutenant, his posture ramrod straight, his eyes fierce as a hawk's. I didn't know his name yet. Donovan Haskell I'd learn later, but I knew that look. It was the look of a man who'd seen battle, who knew what it meant to stand for something. The crowd fell silent, kids clutching their flags, parents frozen mid-sentence. Curtis's radio slipped from his hand, clattering on the pavement. Reggie and Lance stepped back, their bravado crumbling like dry leaves. Tyler's smirk vanished, and Marissa's phone lowered, her mouth agape. I thought, well, I'll be. What's this now? The Marines halted 10 yards from my chair, their boots echoing like gunfire. Lieutenant Haskell barked a command, and they snapped to attention, a wall of honor in blue and white. He stepped forward, his eyes locking on Vernon first. He saluted, crisp and sharp. "Gunnery Sergeant Shelby, sir," he said, his voice clear as a bell. "It's an honor." Vernon returned the salute, a faint smile on his lips. "Good to see you, Lieutenant." I wondered how they knew each other, but there was no time to ask. Then Haskell turned to me, and his eyes softened, like he saw not just an old man, but the soldier I'd been. He saluted again, slow and deliberate. "First Sergeant Jessup, sir," he said, his voice carrying over the stunned crowd. "On behalf of Charlie Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, we honor your service. Vietnam, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and the lives you saved at Bravo Checkpoint, 68. His words hit me like a wave, pulling me back to that night. Smoke, blood, Ray's weight in my arms. I hadn't heard my service spoken aloud in decades, not like this, not with 100 eyes watching. My throat tightened, my eyes burning. I stood, slow and shaky, my knees protesting, but my spine straight as it was in 70. I returned the salute, my hand steady despite the tremble in my heart. "Thank you, Lieutenant," I said, my voice thick, barely above a whisper. The crowd was dead silent, like the world held its breath. Haskell turned to his Marines. "Company, present arms," he commanded. As one, 47 rifles rose, a salute so precise it sent a shiver down my spine. I stood there, an old man in a worn jacket. But in that moment, I was First Sergeant Jessup again, leading my men, keeping my promises. The crowd gasped, some whispering, others staring in awe. A child's voice broke the silence. "Mommy, what's happening?" And I thought, "Child, this is what honor looks like." Nadine wiped her eyes, her apron clutched in her hands. "You should have known better, Curtis," she said, her voice shaking with pride and anger. Curtis stammered, his face red. I didn't know." His words trailed off, weak as a dying breeze. Tyler and his friends shrank, their faces pale as flour. Marissa's phone hit the pavement, and Jamal stared at his sneakers like they held the secrets of the universe. The crowd's murmurs turned to shame, then awe. A woman in a sundress started clapping, slow and deliberate. Then another joined, and another, until the applause rolled over Juniper Avenue like thunder, drowning out the parade's horns. I didn't smile. Didn't need to. I felt their eyes, not judging now, but seeing me, really seeing me. Haskell stepped closer, his voice low. Just for me. "First Sergeant, when we heard you were here, we came right away. My brother, one of our gunners, he's alive because of what you did at Bravo. We don't forget." His words hit harder than any metal, and I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I thought of Ray, of the men I couldn't save, and of the ones who made it home because we held the line. I looked at the crowd, at faces now tearful, ashamed, proud. I thought, this ain't about me. It's about them, the ones who didn't come back. I'd kept my promise to live honorably, and today, that was enough. Haskell saluted one last time, then turned to his men. "Company, dismiss." The Marines broke formation, but many lingered, some approaching to shake my hand, their grips firm, their eyes full of respect. The parade started up again, floats rolling, but it felt far away, like a dream fading. Curtis shuffled over, his head bowed. "Mr. Jessup, sir, I'm so sorry, I didn't know." His voice was small, like a boy caught stealing. I looked at him, my eyes calm but unyielding. "You didn't ask," I said, simple as that. Then I turned to Tyler and his crew, who stood frozen, their bravado gone. "And you kids, learn some respect. This day ain't about me. It's about those who paid the price." My voice was steady, but inside, I was shaking. Not with anger, but with the weight of it all. Tyler swallowed, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, sir." I nodded, but didn't answer. I didn't need their words. I'd stood my ground, and the truth had spoken louder than any apology. Nadine brought me a fresh coffee, her smile warm as the cup. "On the house, Mr. Jessup," she said, waving off my dollar bill. "You're welcome here any time." I took it, grateful, and picked up my chair, its metal frame light in my hands now. Vernon clapped my shoulder, murmuring, "You did good, brother." A few Marines walked with us as I started the slow trek back to Tumbleweed Drive, their voices low, their presence a quiet honor. The parade's music faded behind me, but I carried something else. Pride, not for myself, but for the men I'd served with, the promises I'd kept. Juniper Avenue would never be the same, and neither would I.